Welcome, loyal subjects, to the second edition of our COVID cast. Joey, would you like to update our million of listeners as to your condition?
This should be the final episode of COVID cast because, I'm going to be dead by the end of it. This the last episode of the COVID cast because I've been on quarantine for like 11 or 12 days. So, I'm feeling better. Don't really have any symptoms. I just the past couple days have had like the last of the congestion, but I have my smell and taste back, which has been amazing because being quarantined and not being able to taste food has been pretty lame. But
Negative.
Yeah, that's good. Good.
I did the nasal swab and I tested negative, so good to go. You didn't give it to me.
Okay, right to your brain.
It wasn't that bad because I got to do it myself. So I felt like because I had so so I did it at a place like a drive up. They hand you a big bag with everything in it, and the person instructs you what to do. So you grab the swab. They tell you how far. Yeah, they tell you how far in to go. They're like, all right, swirl it around, hold, and they count, and then boom. So because I could control it, even though it was uncomfortable, I was the one doing it. So it's like when you try, it's like when you pinch yourself, it doesn't hurt as bad. So I think if you did it yourself, you might have had a better experience.
For sure. No, I had the lady who did mine, she was cool, but yeah, I had some lady that they bring me in a tent and you have to like lean back and then she like jams it up my right nostril and she's like, we can't get through on this side. I'm like, oh, great. And so then she jams it through on the other one and she's like, oh, we made it. And then she's like twirling it in there. And then she's like, all right, just give me 5 more seconds. And then she's just like blending my brain, it felt like, for what felt like eternity, but it was probably only like an hour and a half she had that thing in my brain. But
wow.
It was traumatic if you couldn't tell.
It's a crazy world we're living in, but we can't do it.
Yeah, we can't complain too much.
Yeah, we can't. We really can't. Luckily you're okay, and you'll be back soon. The studio ready for your return. And we have a lot to talk about. I don't even know if we have enough time to talk about all the stuff that we have to talk about. The most important thing,
unlimited topics.
I mean, where do we start? Because you have DC retiring, right? Or retiring. You have this card coming up, which
let's start there. That's the apple of this week's eye, I guess you could say. That's the big event of the week. There was the Contender Series last night, which was another exciting night of Contender Series. All 5 fighters got contracts, which was impressive. There was 5 fights, and the 5 winners all got contracts. I just love the Tuesday Night Contender Series. The fights are such high quality on there. And I used to think like, I would never want to get to the UFC through one like the Ultimate Fighter, because the Ultimate Fighter is really not made for the show or for the contestants. It's made for the UFC to pump out content. They're not really worried about getting their next world champion. They just were making a TV show kind of deal. Whereas the Contender Series isn't that. It's really just like, all right, here's your night. You get a shot on this card, and if you make it, you make it. But yeah, I really like the structure of it, and the fighter, it seems to be a fair shake for the fighters and get them some good exposure. But I don't think there was a ton to talk about from last night's Contender. Just wanted to give it its kudos because it's a great show and I love the fights on there.
Did you see the guy that dislocated his elbow?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, seen that live. Eli did that live. I don't know if you remember about a year ago at my training partner Eli. He was stuck in a scramble. That was a slam last night. Eli was in like a scramble and tried to like brace back for himself as he like kind of got taken backwards and put framed. And Eli's was worse. Eli's went bink and like his whole was backwards. And then I watched it get like put back in. But yeah, last night's was pretty gnarly too, but it wasn't the worst one I've seen. And I've also seen it happen in football a couple times. So yeah, I'm weirdly conditioned to that disgusting injury.
I I will never in my life be conditioned. I hate, like, I'm the most squeamish person you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
So when I saw Anderson Silva break his leg live,
Oh.
and I was so excited because it was the first pay-per-view that I convinced my dad to buy for me. So I was super excited because I'm like, dude, Anderson's not losing again.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. It was like, at that time, the mystique around Anderson was still high.
I would have put my mom's life on the fact that the first fight was a fluke. I'm like, no way, Anderson's gonna kill him this time. Like, no way. And then sure enough, he comes out and throws a leg kick. Oh.
When I saw his leg break, I was like, I didn't even know how to respond. My mouth was just open. I was just sitting there like, what?
To me, the only thing that got me more squeamish, because it used to be for me, I was real squeamish about blood. You know, being a fighter kind of helped me through that, and just as many injuries as I've had over the years. But as a kid, I was real squeamish to blood. And I remember the Conor Eddie Alvarez fight. I don't know if you remember this moment, but Weidman shoots for a takedown on Yoel, and Yoel leaping knees wide on the entry, and huge gash on the top of the skull, and immediate like spewing of blood. That one was brutal to watch.
Yeah, that was brutal, and that was a very violent. Speaking of Yoel, just before we get into DC, we said we were going to get into DC, and then we did.
And then digress 7 times.
But Yoel just pulled out of his fight against Uriah Hall. I guess there's an injury. I read somewhere he said it was an injury. Other places were saying it was undisclosed, but it's unfortunate. He's in his 40s. And after the Adesanya fight and this, I was reading something that people were wondering whether they were going to release him. I doubt that. But is he landing? Like, are we almost done with Yoel? Like, do you think that at his age, these injuries have to do? I mean, he's a physical freak and one of the best. In my opinion, one of the most, like, I think he is one of the most worthy of respect in in mixed martial arts, just because of what he did at his age, what he did before. But at that age, are these injuries just a result of being that age?
Yeah, I think there is some of that to it. And another thing you really have to consider, like a lot of those countries and, South America and Cuba and Brazil in particular, that age thing is real. You know how they are like faking the birth certificates and stuff. Like Yoel is really like, the rumors of him being older than what they say have like some legitimacy to them. Jose Aldo is like 2 years older than they say he is in the UFC. Jose Aldo is like 37 now. He's not 35, which is crazy because my coach is 35. And my coach is like, Jose is 2 years older than me, no doubt. And they like grew up together in Brazil. He's like, Jose is 2 years older than me. They get his birth certificate wrong. I'm like, wow, like my coach wouldn't make that up. So I thought that was weird, And so when you hear that, it's like, okay, so if Yoel is really, say he's 1 or 2 years older, say he's 43 or 44, it's like, that's tough, like Tom Brady is like the anomaly of sports extending his career to 42 he'll be this year or something crazy, 42, 43. But it's like, at the end of the day, he's covered in pads, bouncing around in a pocket, and he's like notoriously known for being a intellectual quarterback who will throw it away, or, like he's good at managing himself and avoiding risk for the most part. So it's like MMA isn't that game. You don't get signed to fight against Paulo Costa and say, you know what, I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to throw it away when I get endangered. No. You got the eraser coming at you. So it's like when you got a guy like Yoel and you're still giving him those fights, when you're still giving them to Izzy, you can give him nothing but respect, because this isn't like a landing of the plane of like, say, Dan Henderson, for example, who fought real high-level guys like Yoel and was a real formidable force that didn't reach championship level, but still got a bunch of really hard fights. But then, Henderson really started to taper off. Like, Yoel is older than Hendo was at his retirement fight, and his last fight was just Izzy. It's like, that's crazy. In ways, what Yoel is doing is insane. And you could argue that if you were to give him the whatever, you were to give him some of the middle of the pack right now, some of the bigger middle of the pack guys from middleweight, some of the bigger names, I think you could extend his career a few more years. Like, Uriah Hall, I think, is one of those guys, for example, where it's like, all right, we could see like peak Yoel, so to speak, in this fight. We can see the highs of Yoel. Whereas when you give him to Izzy, the best in the world at the time, it's like he's going to be able to shut Yoel down in a lot of ways because Yoel's going to have to play a very certain particular game to try and win a fight like that at this stage in his career, So it's like, let's just accept where he is now. Let's not try to make him a champion anymore. And let's just have some fun Yoel fights before his time is up, because he definitely has landed in that plane of his career, But yeah, Yoel has got to be, allegations aside, because there are, some allegations of PEDs around him. And there have been people who have used that against them. But, at the end of the day, when somebody looks like that, it's easy to throw PED allegations. And last thing I'll say on this really is, even post, we've seen a lot of those guys who had those allegations, then, come the USADA era, like they vanish. But Yoel went through the Olympics with USADA and then also to the UFC. So Yoel's been getting tested pretty much his whole life and has looked like that. So I don't put Yoel in that cheater category. I take everything he's done legitimately. And yeah, I have so much respect for that guy. You see the way the Masvidals of the world respect him and stuff. And like Masvidal, one of those guys who's like a me, like kind of bigger than the game kind of guy, still puts Yoel like ahead of him and looks at him as an elder down there in Miami and whatnot, which is awesome to see. He still gets the respect he deserves.
Yeah, and Yoel, like his highest achievements have come under USADA's eye, the Olympics,
exactly.
The UFC. So it's hard to make the argument that his success is maybe in some other promotion at one point in his life, but
it's just the low-hanging fruit. It's easy to point at Yoel and say that guy beat me because he was on steroids.
Yeah,
easy.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna be like, no, not Yoel. Not many people are going to be able to stick up for him. And this guy's done juice. Like, he just looks so different than you or I. It's like, how do you say that he's just eaten vegetables and meat and got like that? It's like, that guy is a gorilla.
Yeah, I'll say this. There is one guy, though, who will never have controversy about PEDs, and it's Daniel Cormier. Let's talk about let's talk about DC's retirement. This is I'm so excited for this third fight. I'm so excited. We're gonna give our prediction.
I've been hearing reviews. A lot of my friends that are fight fans are like, this fight ain't doing anything for me. I'm like, you are a casual, my friend.
Yeah, that's casual if I ever heard it.
Yeah, and that, other than you, has been the majority of the people I've talked to this week have not really been too hype about DC Stipe. And I'm like, How can you not get up for this one? This one for me is like pre-packaged promotion. Like, it's DC. Like, it's the daddest man on the planet. We're getting his farewell. You have to be excited for this one. And I went down memory lane this week. I watched DC versus Cael Sanders in the NCAA tournament. And Cael Sanders was like the #1 wrestler of their generation. As John Jones was the greatest fighter of the generation. So DC went straight from wrestling, where he was like the #1 guy in the country other than the guy that nobody could beat. And then he comes to the UFC or to MMA, Strikeforce heavyweight champion, comes to the UFC, like he's untouchable, undefeated, then gets to the best guy in the world, which is John Jones. And it's like his whole career, there's just always been the best of the era has been at his time. So he's always been just like right below, like you've never been able to say DC's the best fighter on the planet, and it's like, I feel like this is finally the moment where DC could make a statement and be like, look, like, respect me now. I'm walking away like the 2-time heavyweight champion, 2-time light heavyweight champion, like now achieving champ status twice. It's like, you can't argue with the greatness of Daniel Cormier. Like, he might not be the most electric athlete we've ever seen. But I'm telling you, what this guy's done over his career, back in Strikeforce, even the way he was fighting real high-level guys in Strikeforce. Before the UFC bought Strikeforce, there was 1,000% UFC-level fighters over there. Their bantamweight champion was Ronda Rousey, for crying out loud. And we saw what she did when she came over. We saw what DC did when he came over. Luke Rockhold was their middleweight champion. Masvidal was a contender over there. Cowboy, like, there was a lot of really good guys from Strikeforce that came over, and DC has, in my opinion, had the most successful career. I mean, other than you could say like Ronda maybe, has had the most successful career out of any of them. And, you know, he's really like weathered time in this fight game after such an impressive wrestling career that, you know, I don't see how you don't love DC and want him to win with all your heart in this one. You know, and it's hard to say when somebody's fighting a firefighter. It's like, you got to want Stipe to win. How do you not want Stipe to win? But Stipe is the one guy who could be a firefighter and heavyweight world champion and still manage to not have a single fan.
Listen, we're going to get to that later. Now, just okay. I'm going to let the audience in on some. I didn't have time to prep you, so I'm going to tell you this now with the audience watching. I need you to prepare, because I already have my list. I need you to prepare your top 5 worst on the mic. Top 5 worst on the mic. So and eventually when I'm dialoguing, you just sit there and think. I already have my 5. Or you could just do it, or you could just think about it live. Whatever you want to do. We're doing that.
They're already coming in. They're already making their way.
We're doing that. Yeah. But yes, what I want to say about the DC Stipe fight is I agree with you. It's one of the biggest fights of the year. I mean, one of the biggest fights in history, because it decides the greatest heavyweight champion of all time, in my opinion. Because you have Stipe, who has the most title defenses, and technically, statistically, that's what counts to determine the best, who defended it. That's why people call GSP the best. It was because of how many title fights he was involved in.
Right. Now, you know, Demetrius, you know.
Right, exactly. Now, DC, never have we seen somebody run through people in 2 weight divisions in the way that he did at his size. It doesn't make any sense for someone that big to be that dominant of a wrestler, have that gas tank, and be that good at finishing, because he has a lot of finishes.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm interested about in this fight is the way this fight goes, I think, determines what DC does next. If it's a 5-round war like we talked about last week, I think DC retires, because I think that it feel more gratifying to retire after that kind of victory. But if he goes out there and executes a specific game plan like the first fight and ends the fight in an early way, we're not getting a 4th fight. And for sure that sets up another big paycheck for him, because you know what? I don't know if this is paying out like he really wants it to. And I think part of that is because pandemic, Stipe not being the biggest, you know, draw, and really just not having the gate is the main. Obviously, he doesn't get as big a gate as a Conor, but I imagine if he's looking for boatloads of cash, some giant payday, it would still be out there for him. John, Francis, those are big fights.
Yeah, they are big fights. However, they're not Conor McGregor. You know, it's not like gonna be over the moon. It's not gonna be all right, now instead of insert Francis or John instead of Stipe, now this is gonna do $1.5 million. Like, not true. Sorry. Like, it's not. If you build the right card and hype it up the right way, him and John might get close to something like that. But, you know, like him and Stipe right now, I don't see this doing over 1 million pay-per-view buys. Fight Island's, you know, big jewel of Fight Island was the Masvidal card, which was a stacked card, lots of title fights, great, amazing card with 3 title fights, did 1.3 million. So I don't see DC and Stipe, you know, breaking that. I don't see them necessarily, you know, going over the moon with their pay-per-view sales on this one. And I don't think that John or DC are that big of a draw in terms of pay-per-view. Because pay-per-view, it's tough. You know that you're going to get the 500 buys from the hardcores. But it's like the Conor fights, like 750,000 buys is a real good card. 1 million is like, oh my God, this is great. And then Conor is now to the point where he's like 2 million. Like, he's doubling great cards at this point. Like, a stat card does 1 million. UFC 200 did 1 million. And Conor cards are doing $2 million now. And it's like with nobody underneath, with a shallow undercard, Conor can do $2 million. So it's like, it's so star driven that DC really isn't that celebrity, and neither is John. So I don't see him really having a money fight necessarily to bring him back. That's not to say that Dana can't throw an extra $1 million or $2 million on his guaranteed money to get him to come back, you know, because to DC, that $1 million is life-changing, whereas Conor, adding $1 million ain't doing anything for him because he has $100 million in the bank, you know. It's like,
that's what I'm getting at. I think that the UFC would throw, particularly John, a whole lot of money to fight.
So you don't think it's the fight spectacle itself that intrigues him? You think it's the sales pitch Uncle Dana puts together for him?
Yes, I think if because one, Dana's already said every time someone talks about retirement, Dana always says the exact same thing.
Right.
Retire.
Yeah.
The exception is DC. Every time he talks about DC, he's like, he shouldn't retire because he's still the man. If DC goes up,
it's weird to me because DC's older than all these other guys that are talking about retirement. So it's like, Dana, what are you talking about?
I think there's a play. I think that he wants the third fight with John. It doesn't make any other sense. Why would he come out just come out and say DC shouldn't retire when really after DC beats Stipe, he's already decised the greatest heavyweight, so he doesn't have to defend the heavyweight belt anymore. So what would be left for him? There's only one fight. It's the John fight, and John's holding out. And so what is he holding out for? I think it would be a perfect storm for both fighters. DC gets a third fight and a last hurrah at light heavyweight. I don't think he should put his heavyweight title on the line. It'd be stupid. Too much risk.
See, that's where I think you're wrong. I think that's the only way that we can get that fight is if it's at heavyweight. If DC wins and we get it at heavyweight. Because John's already been holding out for a big heavyweight fight with a big paycheck, and we haven't gotten it. And I think that DC is holding out for – I mean, he's not holding out. He's about to fight this weekend. He's just stepping away. So I think, you know, the only way to get him back, I think DC would definitely want to right that wrong at 205. He doesn't want to beat John on different terms and be like, you know, kind of have opened up a new rivalry at a new weight class. But I think at the end of the day, I think that's the only way that they can put that fight together, all things considered. I think you could convince DC to go back to 205 if you could sell him on one more fight. But I think that John is kind of set on coming up to heavyweight. And if just the timing of it, I think there's no way you get DC to vacate the belt he just won back to go back down to cut to 205 last time. I don't know. There's just
I don't want to see the fight at heavyweight because
really?
I
think there's no way he beats John at 205. I think at heavyweight, there's a real argument that DC really is a heavyweight and really has a shot up here. But I don't think that, you know, I don't think you're going to be able to really sell.
Okay. But what happens if DC loses? It's a catastrophic event because DC loses all the credibility of greatest heavyweight, which is what he wants to retire at. You basically now his entire legacy and career is tainted by John Jones. It is, to me, it's a lose-lose because then we get John as heavyweight champion. And I don't know. Like, I'm not.
I want John to beat DC, and then I want to see John defend it against Stipe and defend it against Francis and defend it against the Black Beast. And then we get like an exciting chapter of John at heavyweight, which we've always known is coming. We've always known John is going up to heavyweight. It's always been the like unavoidable future. And I think we're like getting to that point. I think we're seeing the point in John's career where he slowed down a step and it's all right. Like time for you to go up to the big boys. Stop cutting weight, maybe gain that step back on your heavyweight competition by not being, you know, John supposedly doesn't have a huge cut, but he definitely has a real cut. He ain't walking around at 205. He's 25. So, you know, that's not huge with the water cut one out, but I just think that what's next for John is heavyweight. So I think that it like doesn't matter the way DC's career looks to the public. Like at the end of the day, John's career is still more important because say what you want, who's a better guy, this, that, and the other, who's better for the company or sport. John's a better fighter, you know, and definitely DC is, you know, you could argue better martial artist, whatever. He's such a high level wrestler, so good for the kids and the way he gives back. You know, he's like stepped into coaching roles and whatnot. But at the end of the day, Jonas is the baddest man of all time. And it's like, it kind of you have to defer to his terms in that sense, I feel like, and just the way things are shaping up. But it's hard to say. I mean, yeah, it's really hard to say. And then another thing is Stipe really might win. You know, like Stipe really might win this fight again, which, you know, then that totally shakes up the whole scenario. You know, like DC has a daunting task ahead of him to get through Stipe again.
Yeah, I think DC. I don't think he defends his belt, his heavyweight belt again. Not even for John. Maybe for Francis or someone like that. But he's not going to fight John for the heavyweight championship. I don't think I don't think he should. It would be the biggest risk. Now, if he did take that risk and won, that would be the biggest reward because he won, and you can argue that he won at the most important weight, his true weight, instead of going down, because then he can forever say, well, I went down to fight John at his natural weight. And so, yeah, John beat me, but he had the advantage already. I was handicapped. If he beats him at weight, then it's like, hey, skill for skill, when everything's the same, when both of us are similar, not similar weight, but when both of us are comfortable, I got you. And so that would be good for him, but it's such a big risk at 42.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rough.
But I think it's such a big risk at 42 to see him, what is supposedly a brutal cut for him, to see him get back to 205 to go fight John on John's home court, so to speak, in his weight class again, where John is more, you know, that 205 weight limit lends more to John. It's like, I just don't want to see DC versus John with the cards stacked in John's favor again. I don't want to see it. Like, I know what John does to DC at 205, you know, and that's the way I feel about it. It's like neither one of their two matches were debatable. It's not like we're 1-1 here, and it's like, all right, we got to even it at 205. It's like, no, we know how that runs, what course that runs at 205. And he even said it, DC even said it after their last fight at 205. I guess it's not a rivalry anymore because he just flat out got beat by the guy 2 times in a row, convincingly, finished the second time. It's like, nope, this ain't a rivalry no more, bud. Like, you just got, you know, mollywopped twice. So it's tough to say. And yeah, I judging by the energy around DC, it really does seem to be his last fight, because I wasn't buying it at all the way until this week. I was not buying it. I was like, nope, we're definitely getting the trilogy between him and John, or one big Francis cherry on top, something cool to end his career. But yeah, after hearing everybody in his corner, seeing Luke Rockhold come back over to California to help him with his last training camp, he's got him and Kane posting these emotional comments about like their last ride together. Like, you know, I don't see DC as the guy to fake all of that. You know, like,
it's DC said to Ariel on their show. He said, I'm not going to come back. I'm not going to be where I'm defending this title or fighting five times, but I'll come back for a fight. So he did leave the door open for a fight. He just said, I'm not signing a contract where I'm fighting 5 times. A fight. There's only one fight that would qualify that. It was the Brock Lesnar. Yeah, it was Brock Lesnar. Now it's John. But I don't know where it happens. Look, at the end of the day, we're going to get into our DC Stipe prediction later. Okay. I'm really interested in seeing what you think. But can we talk really quick? Because we'll predict the co-main, the main, and then the Junior Dos Santos and Rosenstruck bout.
Okay.
But before that, we finally, Tyron Woodley is going to fight Colby Covington. Finally.
Thank God.
And I gotta say, this is a matchup that has lost steam significantly, because T Wood lost the belt. He's looked lackluster in his past couple of performances. Colby's last showing was impressive in that it was a war, but he lost. And so you're not looking at two guys that have a lot of momentum going into each other. And so because of that, and because of the lack of fans, I think you're losing a lot of the venom that it was going to bring. But I think that could be rekindled.
So do I.
Yeah, with their interviews, with the way that they talk, with Colby and Tyler, the back and forth. I think they could rekindle this energy. But right now,
so much ridiculousness out of the two sides here that I think it's like, this is going to be like a Nate Connor thing that just stands alone, that like, we don't care if there's a belt. We don't care what's around us. We don't care what their last fights look like. Like, just those two energies colliding, like verbally, and then also the physical fight we're going to get on the back end of that. I'm really excited. I'm really pumped. Definitely the way it plays out, it's like, oh, they've been trying to book this fight for like 3 years now at this point. It's like, so that, that is kind of annoying. But at the end of the day, fights are like fine wine. Like, the more people have wanted it to happen and then haven't and gotten frustrated and be like, oh, I'm not even excited for it. It's like, you go tell that to Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather and how they sold you a shitty fight way past their primes and still sold twice as many pay-per-views if they would have done it at the right time. And like, if we would have got Manny versus Floyd in their primes, would have been a more entertaining fight. But we got it when the people had like been waiting for it for so long, Not that this is anywhere near that in terms of like the public, but for the fight fans, like I feel like people are going to be really excited to see the lead up to this, even if they say they're not, because a lot of people say they hate Colby and whatnot, but they tune into his press conferences so quickly, and it's like, hey.
Listen.
You could be a hater, but hate's just a flavor of love, baby. You love that man. You love Colby,
Listen, I love Colby. Like, I'm open about it. Like,
yeah.
Colby, if Colby's thing were real, I think I'd hate him. Because who can like that person?
Yeah.
But because it's not, it's so amazing to me. It's like the bad guy in WWE that you love. Because you're like, wow, he's so funny. Like, he's clever. I understand like Jorge Masvidal's contention with him that he's, actually he's being fake 100%. I think in terms of like man to man, like realness, like if I knew you and you were nice to me at one point and you're talking garbage about me in public, I understand that. So I'm not saying that that's not legitimate, but in terms of just entertainment and pro wrestling nonsense, I enjoy looking at Colby like you drive by a car crash. Like you don't want to look at it, but you just can't help yourself. It's just, right. And some of the stuff he says is actually so hilarious. And something I love that Colby does is Colby will smile or laugh when he knows what he just said was funny, especially if he makes like the person who's interviewing him laugh. And so like sometimes you could tell that he starts to answer as if he's going to answer seriously, his tone, and then boom, he just drops a terrible name like Ty Quill or something like that, and then the interviewer's like, "What the hell?"
It's just so outrageous.
Yeah, I like it. I like what he does with that because I think it's at this point I think it's only going to get more caricatured, and then eventually, like Chael Sonnen, he'll dial it back all the way to zero, and we'll start to see Colby seriously. And I don't know what will happen, but I think it'll happen eventually. I think he's a guy primed to do it. Although I think Chael was more methodical, maybe a little more intelligent than a Colby. Colby comes off less like, Chael came off more scripted and more. Colby comes off like a bro, like a guy at the gym, So
and he's saying the same things pretty much over and over, whereas Chael really had like some unique takes and things planned for each opponent, like. Anderson with the translator and stuff, and he's like, you could have got an act for $9.99 and told this guy to kick rocks. He's like, but you don't even need to do that because Anderson's going back to his house on California Beach after this and speaking to his children that he's raised in America. It's like, you don't even need a translator. This is all fake. Like those moments of Chael, it's like, wow, that was gold right there. That really, I wish we got Chael after the sport had done what it's done. Obviously Chael was one of those like, like our forefathers of the sport almost. If there was no Chael, we might not have Conor at what Conor was. You know, like I guarantee you the way people are studying Conor and the way he promotes fights, Conor studied Chael in the same way, you know?
Think about it. It had the exact same trajectory.
Yep.
Very popular Brazilian fighter, Silva, versus, non-Brazilian white guy. And that non-Brazilian white guy is considered a clown, not respected by the opposition or by Brazilian fans, and big for trash talk. And the best fighter at the time. Had Chael beaten Anderson, it would have been similar, not meteoric, similar in terms of the narrative. So there's definitely parallels to what Conor was doing. And Conor was the same in that he did it to everybody. He was trash talking every fighter that he fought. He didn't have anybody that.
The difference is that makes Chael's more impressive is Conor is electric in the ring. Chael had a boring fighting style.
Right.
It's hard to say that as like an MMA fighter. Like, to me, Chael was really good, and you can appreciate what he did, but so to speak, in terms of the spectacle, Chael wasn't knocking dudes out. Chael was just getting in there and wrestling and making it a fight, and that's a boring fight nowadays and to casuals and whatnot. But yeah, it's impressive what he did with his career, and when he did it, it was something else. The Ultimate Fighter, Vanderlei Silva, he literally got Vanderlei Silva to fight him on the set of The Ultimate Fighter. The rival coach literally attacked Chael. Like, how do you get somebody so worked up over a character you're playing to where they just have to attack you? Like, they literally have to physically attack you.
It's amazing.
Chael is, he's the ultimate button pusher.
Now, I want to say, because I don't know if you saw, because I want us to come back to this conversation about trash talk in a second with our top 5 worst.
Right.
Because we already know if we do a top 5 best on the mic, Chael's automatically in there, period.
Oh, yeah.
If it's not in your top 5, you're not watching. You've not been watching. Like Joe Rogan, you've not been paying attention to the literature. If you do not put, but I want to really quick ask you, did you read Justin Gaethje's recent quote about his, I've never heard this term, the zone of violence.
That is my no-no square.
Amazing way to describe what he does. That there's this zone of violence that he needs to essentially punish Khabib for entering.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, a chilling statement. The two of them said, Khabib saying he's going to drown him, and Justin saying there's a zone of violence I'm going to punish him with, only makes us
death. Like,
yeah.
Step in there, I have to let you know that there is death in that zone, and it's like, all right, Justin, and seeing Khabib come right back in the comments. Like, when's the last time you seen Khabib in the comments? Like,
never.
He doesn't comment. We're getting Khabib commenting like, oh my God, this is.
I think, but in all fairness, I think that just might be Khabib learning Instagram. Like, some of that might be like, oh, I could leave a comment and it'll show. It's not going to hide under 300 comments. I think he's learning how to do this, thanks to Ali. But I want to say, is a zone of violence the safest and most effective way to prevent contact with COVID?
That's tough because I have COVID, but I feel like if I were to beat somebody, I might give them it. So it's tough to say that. So,
but I'm saying the zone of violence, though, if everybody had a zone of violence, let's say the zone of violence were physical, like you could see it. It's a little cone, and some people had it like less because they weren't as good. Some people had kicking range, so it was far. Some people were, let's say everybody could see this cone and they knew it was violence. Like they knew if they stepped into it, it would hurt. Do you think anybody would have COVID right now?
Definitely not. Way less cases. I would still have COVID.
So you and 30 others would have it.
Yeah.
But the world would be okay.
Yeah, if there was a violence bubble that enforced social distancing, definitely we would see much less cases of it. As far as does that bubble deter Khabib? I don't know. I don't know how scared Khabib gets over violence. Yeah, I don't know. I think that there's yeah, I don't want to go too deep on this fight talk and get into predictions because obviously we have a lot of time to talk about it. But
What I will say is he's never faced anyone more violent than Justin, in my opinion. This is the most violent opponent he's ever faced. I think it would have been Tony if he fought Tony, but Justin is the most violent. So there is there's a little bit of a difference for Khabib in that he's fighting somebody that is different, violent, a different type of violent. However, Khabib's entire game is meant to nullify violence because he takes you down and he literally just suffocates you. And it's hard to be violent from your back or from somebody on your back. So I agree how much the bubble affects, but the way Justin throws his combinations and the way he throws in his kicks and the way he's just and his wrestling, which we've yet to see, who knows? It could be freaking, and he could have the skull of a freaking lion. I don't know. We'll see, and I agree. Let's save our prediction, but all I'm saying is both of these guys are fighting a guy they've never fought before, ever. Yeah, and at a level they've never fought before. So it's going to be fascinating. Now, really quick, I want us to quickly make our predictions for this upcoming pay-per-view. So before we do the top 5, worst on the mic, and then fight corner roll, I want us to make our predictions. So first we have Junior Dos Santos and Rosenstruck.
Rosenstruck.
How do you pronounce his first name? Jairzinho?
Yeah.
Jairzinho, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Who do you got in that fight?
This one's interesting. I believe JDS is a decent dog in that one. I believe they have Rosenstruck is the favorite, which, you know, it's tough to go against JDS in that fight, considering Rosenstruck's style. I know he really has a lot of power. And, you know, a Francis fight can't really give you a great read on a guy a lot of times because, you know, Francis hit Rosenstruck in Rosenstruck's last fight. He got hit with a bomb in the first 15 seconds by Francis and was unconscious before the fight even started, basically. You know, so it's tough to take a ton away from that, especially after he beat Overeem. But Overeem is a similar guy to JDS, in my opinion. You know, like a really high-level technical guy who has tons of experience against the best in the world, but, you know, not at their peak physical state anymore in their career. But I still see JDS as a bit too nuanced and experienced for Rosenstruck to flat out beat him. I think Rosenstruck has enough power to stop JDS, especially JDS being, you know, on the back 9 of his career, definitely. You know, but all things considered, and JDS being the underdog, and these situations being a little different, it being, you know, the COVID situation, you know, it's going to be a little different fight week. You know, it's going to be not as many distractions. So I think not having all those distractions and coming off of a violent knockout, you know, it might be a little tougher week mentally for Rosenstruck. You know, who knows? It's a lot of, you know, reading into things, but I just think all things considered, I got to go JDS, especially if I was placing a bet on this. I would place the bet on JDS, him being the underdog. You know, I think this one you could say is a pick 'em. You know, it's kind of a coin toss on who comes out and performs. But considering JDS is the underdog, I'm going to go there on my pick.
Yeah, so Rosenstruck, I agree, is not the good bet. His fight against Alistair Overeem, he was losing, and he landed a victory shot at the end. Obviously, Francis knocked him out in 20 seconds. But prior to that, Rosenstruck was knocking people out early in the fight. And he has a lot of power, and he's younger. And I think JDS has had his chin rattled so many times that fighting a guy with power like this is not going to be good for him. So I'm going to go Rosenstruck. I think he comes back from that Francis loss, and I think he finishes JDS. I don't know when, but I think he can do it. Up next, we have Sugar Sean O'Malley against Chito Vera.
Yes.
I got to see this one, man. I'm gonna say Marlon Chito Vera. I'm gonna say that I watched both of their last fights, and Vera is very hittable, and Sean O'Malley has a tendency to hit hittable people.
Yeah.
But my gosh, this guy's jiu-jitsu is phenomenal.
Marlon Vera is legit, bro. He's very.
Yeah.
He's.
He was shooting. He shot a standing arm triangle. I mean, the guy shot like a cross or something like that, and he just cinched it up and dropped him. He had it, but he didn't have leverage to apply that pressure. And the guy he was fighting, I forget his name, was able to.
That fight or the fight before?
No. It wasn't that fight.
He lost his last fight, actually. He won, but Son got the decision.
Okay, well, it wasn't that one.
The fight before last then.
It was his last
fight was?
Here, I could actually tell you right now who it was. It wasn't Song Yadong. It was against, this must have been 2019. It was against Andre Ewell, where he won the third round by TKO. But the first, in the beginning of the fight, first round, Ewell throws a combination, and Vera just cinches up an arm triangle and drops. And he did it again later in the fight, and he looked so dangerous with his submission game that I think, although people need to stop sleeping on Sean O'Malley and his jiu-jitsu because he trains with some of the best.
Definitely.
But I think that affect this fight is the fact that Chito's hittable, and Sean O'Malley has superior footwork, range, and clearly has knockout power at that weight. He's fighting underweight. I think he's doing the Connor thing. He's fighting lower in his weight, and eventually he's going to move up. I would have to take Sean O'Malley. Is it a knockout? I don't know. All things would seem to suggest that he can do it. But Vera's a tough guy, and he got hit a lot in these fights, and he's not a guy that's getting knocked out. So if he knocks out Vera, though, that's a big deal. People need to be on high alert if Sean O'Malley knocks this guy out, because I don't think this is a guy that's just going to get knocked out like that. He's still, he's been
7-1 in the UFC, I believe. Chito.
What is he?
Like 7-1 in the UFC, and his fight was his loss. And a lot of people thought he won that fight against Song Yadong, who is right in the top 10 or top 15. Song Yadong's getting up there in the rankings. Losing on basically, we'll call that his last fight a draw against top 15 guy. And Chito Vera was top 15. And then O'Malley went to 15 and knocked Chito out of the top 15. So it looks like O'Malley's fighting another unranked guy, but really these guys are both right at 15. And I think that Chito Vera, that was his first time making it to the top 15 till O'Malley knocked him out. I think he really is a top 15 bantamweight in the world. I think Chito Vera is so well-rounded and so skilled that he definitely is a top 15 guy. And this is a real test for O'Malley. I think if O'Malley comes out and looks like the O'Malley we've seen, and if he is landing his highlight reel strikes and even just outclasses him for 3 rounds like we've seen him do in his fights, or gets the knockout, I think this propels O'Malley to a Dominic Cruz fight. I think Dominic Cruz is right there at 10 or 11 or 12, and I think we get O'Malley Cruz.
I was just about to say, could you imagine an O'Malley Cruz fight?
Yeah. And, going on our predictions here, or giving my prediction here, I got to go O'Malley on this one. Like you said, the grappling that he's being exposed to. He's training with Tenquinho Mendez, who is just won ADCC Worlds this past year. But one thing people don't realize about Tenquinho is he was in the UFC a few years ago, and Cody Garbrandt beat him, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, just talking jiu-jitsu, Tenquinho is levels ahead of the guys Sean is going to be going against in the UFC. So I think on this one, I got to go Sean. I for sure. I think Sean's going to be champ one day. I think that, he's on that rise right now. And yeah, I think that Chito is, Chito's much more than this, but in this situation. I think he's a stepping stone for Sean O'Malley's career. But with that being said, I think Chito is still going to have a very respectable career and, be a contender later on as well. I think this is like, I had this thought the other day. In hindsight, we look back at Poirier versus Conor, and it's like, wow, at the time, nobody appreciated that fight for what it was. But now looking back on it 5 years later, it's like, wow, Poirier versus Conor was a great fight that nobody really knew about those guys to that level yet. And I think this is going to be one of those fights. When we look back in 5 years, it's like, wow, Chito versus O'Malley, I would love to see that fight. It's like, yeah, it's already happened when they were both on their come-ups, So I think that both these guys are going to be around for a real long time. And I think Chito is going to reestablish himself as a contender. And we might see, this might be a rivalry we see, play out in that bantamweight division, which I think is very exciting. They're making, that division is on fire right now. But yeah, that being said, I'm going Sean. And I'm going to say he gets the finish. I think he does. I think he gets it. I think that Chito can't close the distance just based on footwork and Sean's legitimate grappling. I don't think he takes it down, gets it to the ground, and if he does, I see O'Malley get him back up and just eventually catching him. He's just too good on the feet for Chito. Chito is very good, but he's a real foundational, fundamental style fighter. And I think when you got somebody with Sean who's got all those fundamentals, but with so many more layers to the game, I think he sees Chito's game from a higher perspective and can see the holes in it and has some things waiting for Chito that he's not ready for.
It's going to be a great fight, I think. I think it's going to be I think it's a sneaker. Might be the best fight on the card. But
yeah.
let's say now to the main event, or let's go now to the main event, DC versus Stipe Miocic for the heavyweight title of the world. I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah. I'm going to keep it short on this one. I think Stipe won that fight off of an adjustment he's made. And I think that, from what we've seen, DC, they've been in the cage for about 20 minutes together at this point. And in that 20 minutes, we've seen DC outfight Stipe and finish him once. And I think we've seen Stipe make an adjustment on DC late in a fight and get a finish based on body shots. But I think that DC even said it, you can only make that adjustment once. You can only use that trick to beat somebody once. Whereas when you look at that last fight, DC won 20 minutes of it. So I think in this fight, DC is going to make the adjustments, and I think he wins. I got to go DC on this one. My heart's telling me DC too, though, which is always a bad sign for predictions. If your heart is telling you something for a long time, it's easy for your head to be convinced, and you go with who you want to win, which for me, I can't lie, is DC. So that's my pick on this one. I got DC. I hope this one goes the distance, as weird as that sounds. I don't want to finish. I want to see somebody decisively win this one over 25 and us be able to say, this guy is the guy.
So here's what I'll say. I, like you, my heart says DC.
Yeah.
But my head also says DC. And here's why.
Okay. Yep.
What you said was exactly what I was thinking. Over the course of their fights, the better fighter was clearly DC. He was winning the majority of both of those fights, knocking him out once, and then Stipe got him back by finishing him. But like you said, that was a technique adjustment. One technique, a body shot, a specific body shot, throwing the left hand body, right?
Off center line and throwing that, digging body shot. And he really landed that exact punch 14 times. It's not like he was hitting DC to the body from different angles. It was landing body kicks that eventually weathered DC with body work. It was literally the same punch. It's one punch that, he implemented. So, yeah, literally one technique.
He didn't overwhelm him with techniques. He didn't outclass him. He surprised him with a technique DC did not expect. And you could argue that DC never should have been in that position because he should have wrestled. Because his coach was saying you should. Why were you not wrestling? You went away from the game plan. And it's true because in the first round, that was a 10-8 round. What did DC do? wrestle and maul. It's like they know how to do. That's all Kane and DC and Khabib and all these guys know how to do is wrestle and maul. And that's why I think he's winning this fight. And I'm sorry, I don't think it goes to a decision. If DC does in a smaller cage, DC finishes guys from that position, either by choking them or by TKOing them with, vicious ground and pound. So I actually think it's going to be – DC already showed off, with the striking. He already knocked him out. He already showed he can outbox him. I had someone tell me, well, Stipe's the better boxer. Well, DC outboxed him for 2 fights. You can make an argument that body shot was Stipe's response to that. And, yeah, his win. But as far as just boxing, DC was landing.
The thing is, with DC that you have to consider, you're not boxing DC. You're dirty boxing DC. I think Stipe beats DC in a boxing match. But I think, when you're talking MMA boxing, dirty boxing with the threat of the takedown mixed in there all the time, the clinches mixed in there all the time, just like Chito Vera was able to slip off and grab that choke, where you slip a punch and now you're lined up with somebody's shoulder and you can lock that choke up if you anticipate a punch. DC does the same thing, where he leans off center line and swims over with one hand and gets an underhook or an overhook. Like, he'll swim over and just grab an overhook. He'll slip off, say the right hand is coming, he'll slip off the right hand and reach over and grab some sort of clinch now. And now you're engaged in a clinch that is either for grappling purposes or just to mitigate the combination that you had behind that punch that he got out of the way of. And now there's no left hand coming because he tied it up while you were throwing the right. And now he can dirty box off of that. He could just grab it, feed away and dirty box, or he can pummel into that and now grapple off of that. So DC has those tricks that don't make this just a boxing match. When you're able to box and get overhooks and stuff like that, it's now evolved into something else, which DC's game is so nuanced. And I think that, you're right. I think when you're talking MMA boxing, DC's one of the best at that, at those classes.
Think about how he's overcome range differences, bigger guys, and been able to land clean. And here's the thing. Yeah, he does what you're saying, but there were multiple times in that fight where DC lands something, steps back, boom, and responds beautifully. Where he just looks so fast and fluid. And I think that he looked more impressive in the striking. We'll say striking, because boxing, like you said, is a different game, like by itself. But MMA striking and just landing punches, DC was doing better. So you can't even say Stipe had him there and DC just wrestled him. DC knocked him out. So I think that DC's already shown that he's the better fighter. He was injured this last fight, and he still looked better than Stipe. And he wasn't injured now and had a camp with no distractions. Like, that's a match made in heaven for a guy like DC. Yeah. But don't overlook that Stipe has the same conditions. No distraction, by himself. A guy who's now well-adjusted as a family man. His daughter was just practically born their last fight. Less media obligations. For a guy like Stipe, I feel like that favors him too. So Stipe, nobody should be counting him out. Stipe can knock him out. Stipe can beat him the same way. But I feel in my heart and my mind that DC has the tools to beat him. And it would just be an upset to me if Stipe won. It would be an upset.
But I have to make one more note on that is, just like we know the adjustment DC has to make, and he only has to account for one technique, so to speak. It's like, yes, but that's disrespecting Stipe, because Stipe knows that adjustment as well. Stipe knows what DC's going to do to block that body shot now. And now, okay, he might lean into that and answer with some uppercut across. He might block the body, come overhand. There's some counters that you can do based off of blocking a body shot and answering. So now DC might be quick to go to those. So now Stipe could, lean, set that up, and boom, come crack him up top with the hook. So it's like, just like there's only one technique that DC has to address, Stipe knows the technique that DC is going to be addressing. So now he fake that and use it to, now we're fighting. It's the third time these guys are going in there together. So now we're fighting off of like adjustments of adjustments of adjustments. So they're so deep into each other's games now that this is just going to be so much fun. And I'm really looking forward to it.
And that's why whoever told you that this fight doesn't do it for them, I don't need.
I know. I know. Like,
look, I'll say this. I agree. I think that all of that gets nullified by DC's wrestling. There's nothing Stipe could do. Not a
Stipe's
damn.
a great wrestler for MMA, but there's levels to this.
There's nothing Stipe could do in a fight camp to adjust to what DC could do in wrestling. To what DC could do to him if he decides to go in there and fight him like he did Black Beast and chain those beautiful takedowns together where he's switching the high cross to the double, he's running the pike, and all of a sudden he's snapping down an ankle pick, and you're like, whoa, what's up? There's so many at once. Like,
and his stature, it's like he can get underneath these heavyweights so easy, which is huge. It really is huge.
All right, let's speaking of Stipe, I've I've written my top 5 worst on the microphone in the UFC.
Some shared people on our list, but
so we're gonna start. I'm gonna start from number 5, and these are in order. Mine are in order. If yours aren't, it's fine. Mine are absolutely in order.
In order.
My number 5 worst on the mic. This might surprise you. Triple C, Henry Cejudo.
Ah, okay.
Number 5. Now he's not 4 and up because I think like something he's doing is correct, but there's a reason he's called the Cringe King, and I think the way he trash talks, the way he talks things maybe not, but the way he trash talks and some of the disingenuous nature of it, cringe for me. Not a fan. He's number 5 on my top 5 worst on the mic.
Okay, I like that. All right, my number 5, Luke Rockhold.
Wow.
Luke Rockhold. Like, and one specific moment comes to mind. The build-up between him and Bisping was terrible. When he's like, you know, and Bisping mocked him so perfectly. Bisping's like, believe, conceive, achieve. Shut the fuck up. You sound like the worst self-help book ever written. And I was like, wow, Bisping, thank you so much. You said what everybody wanted to hear. Like, and it's tough to go against Bisping in a verbal sparring match, but, you know.
GSP did it.
Yeah. Luke has that, like, layer of arrogance, but doesn't have, like, the intelligence to match it. You know, it's like, yeah, great. You're the most handsome guy in the UFC. No homo. It's like, but we're in a fight sport, and it just doesn't work, bro. It doesn't work. Like, it's so cringy, and just Luke Rockhold talking crap with like his smug arrogance. It's just like, oh, dude, stop. Like, stop. You like, yeah, I just can't do it. I can't do it.
All right, number 4. My number 4. Kamaruddin Usman.
Okay. Yeah, I knew it.
Listen, this isn't just because I'm a Masvidal fan. I really think Usman is one of those guys that his persona that he's trying to play doesn't translate to the microphone. Yeah. After a fight, when he's saying I'm a mother effing problem, that's cool. That comes across better because he just finished beating some guy up. Right. But when it's plain clothes, microphone in hand, I think that personality that he's trying to portray doesn't shine through in a way that's cool. It shines through in a way that's like, dude, what are you doing? And I think some of the stuff he said has sounded a little like when Tyron Woodley said, oh, here comes LL Cool J. Everybody was laughing because that's how everybody felt. And if Tyron Woodley hadn't gone out there and just laid an egg, I think people would have, like, I think everybody wanted Usman to lose that fight, and Usman won them over, or won the.
Everybody thought Usman was going to get beat. He was like a not as good version of Woodley, and then we were going to get Woodley Askren. That's what everybody thought.
Yeah, and the
both
thing
of those
is,
guys got dominated on that card. Askren knocked out in 5 seconds, or no, that was the Lawler card actually. But yeah, I digress.
But yeah, it was very, very interesting. Very interesting. That the way that was built up. But yeah, I don't think Usman's great on the mic. I think that I think mid-sentence he remembers that he's trying to do a cool persona, and he changed the way he talks mid-sentence. Yeah. There's times he's talking, and you could tell that he's like, oh wait, I gotta throw in my coolness here.
Right. You could tell he's always like the kid trying to impress the more popular kid that's also at the press conference. Like, he's trying to get the acceptance of the people. I don't know. It's just like painful. Like, you could tell it's just like it's bred from insecurity of like desiring acceptance or something. Like, yeah, Usman's is just painful. But I'll spoil it. He is on mine, but he's not number 4 yet. For me, number 4 might not make sense, but you got to hear me out. So it's absolutely terrible trash talk, but it works. And it's going to shock you, but my number 4 worst trash talker of all time is GSP. I think GSP is absolutely terrible at trash talk, but I think that he's so polite and friendly on other occasions that it's like when he does trash talk, you know it's terrible, but you also like just gobble it up because it's so bad and you know how nice he is that it's like, wow, thank you for trying, GSP. This is terrible, but I love it and it's warming my heart. Like, your trash talk is so it's like when the little kid in class like sticks up for themselves and you never expect it, and like the little nerdy kid who gets picked on with their glasses calls the bully a butthead or something, and like everyone's like, oh, even though it wasn't a good comeback, they just said something and that was enough. And like GSP is just that guy. He's such a good guy. When he does try and like say something back, when he does try and trash talk back with Bisping, and he's Michael Bisping, are you intoxicated? Like, that is trash. That is terrible, but it's hilarious because he's GSP. So, okay. Yeah.
I rock with that. I think that's a good pick. For my next pick, I gotta go with the heavyweight champ, Stipe Miocic.
Okay.
I have him number 3 on this list.
Yeah,
you know,
sounds like.
It'll be a great fight. I mean, we're not wrestling. I mean, like he always has this, like, he answers every question like the person asking it should obviously know the answer.
Right. And it's like,
but
we know.
But he doesn't, right.
But like, yeah, like.
We know what you're going to say.
Game at all.
Like, that's the thing. Like DC says, bring your wrestling shoes. Or like when DC said, I just think I'm a better fighter than him. And then they asked Stipe, what do you think of that? They're lobbing Stipe a softball for Stipe to say, this guy, I'm the better fighter. But Stipe goes, I guess he's the better fighter. What do you want me to do? We'll find out. I'm like, what? What do you mean? Did you just agree with it?
Yeah, like he doesn't
like,
even
look,
back and forth.
Like, look, we're not making fun of these guys. They're warriors. We love them. We're making fun of one particular aspect of fighting that they didn't originally sign up for. So you got to be a little bit fair. But it's so obviously a softball. You're supposed to throw something back, just like a fight. You throw. And he's just like, well, I guess we'll find out and new. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Like, there's just guys who it just seems like, dude, you don't get the game we're playing right now. Like, that's not what we're doing here, Stipe. Like, come on, just join in. Like, let's call each other dickheads or something. Like, let's give them something. Like, you can't just like be passive aggressive about everything. Like, what? It's so annoying. He's like just such a dad and such a square, good guy that probably has all his shit together. And it's like, dude, like, come on, do something cool. Like, you can't come to a press conference with your spectacles and your hair parted. It's like, dude, you can't come in here looking like a 40-year-old dad. Like, if you are, play that character up to an extreme or something. But like, it's painful. It's so painful. But yeah, for number 3 for me, I'm gonna go Usman. I think Usman is just so painful. Masvidal said it best. His 17 personalities. Which one is gonna show up? Are we gonna get this guy who's super condescending and just like saying that his opponent is absolute dog trash? But it's like, dude, you can't do that over and over again. And then also, when you then are paying them respect in other lights, it's like you can't call somebody complete dog trash in one interview and then 5 minutes later in that interview acknowledge that they're your best opponent you've ever faced in your career. It's like, not how it works, bro. Like another guy who just doesn't see the game that's going on here. It's like we all know the obvious right answer. It's up to you to be creative and make this entertaining. And some of these guys are not woke to what's going on.
Absolutely. All right. What are we on? Number 3? All right. No, number 2. Number 2.
Yeah.
My number 2, I dug into the vault, and I'm going with Tito Ortiz.
Dang
For
it.
number 2.
Similar list.
Yeah.
Tito is, yeah.
Yeah, Tito, the worst one ever. It's not the Christopher Walken. If people don't know, when Tito was fighting Chael Sonnen,
Yeah.
he tried to do the Christopher Walken quote. I forget where it's from, but he's talking about a lion and his mane and sitting in the jungle and the hyenas coming up, and then the lion gets up.
Just literally starts snoring.
Yeah, so in the middle of
down on the table at the press conference and starts snoring.
He so poorly retold it that Chael starts to snore. And that went over for more than that. But the worst one was when he was fighting, who was it? It was Chael the first time that they fought when they were in the UFC. And was it Chael? It might not have been Chael. Well, it might have been Chael, where he grabs the can of soda and he goes, it's gonna get smacked. As way by I do in the cage. I'm like,
he brings in just like the worst props that he obviously just found backstage. It's like, come on. And like, at least Cejudo went to the point where he's like bringing in a snake for TJ Dillashaw. He's bringing, like he's at least playing it up with the props. Like Tito was just.
I must correct myself. This was actually the buildup for that same fight with the Christopher Walken. So it was the Bellator fight. I was confused. I thought that because I guess it was on Fox, so I assumed it was older than it was.
Yeah.
I got ESPN. I'm an ESPN elitist, but it was. I want to make sure that I got this right. Yeah, he busts out a can of juicy juice. He said, "This right here is Chael Sonnen. Juicy juice," and he smashes it and he goes, he's gonna get smashed as per I do in the cage. And I'm like, that was terrible.
Yeah.
You could tell that the bad part about that is you could tell you planned that.
Right.
So no excuses.
He's got to just eat that. Ugh.
All right, who's your number 2, man?
It's tough because we basically have the same list. For me, Stipe's got to be up there. I want to change the narrative though. I feel like you could put it because they're terrible at trash talk. I feel, but they're good at it because how real they are and the fact that they don't entertain the trash talk side of it at all. But the Diaz brothers, the way they're verbal punching bags, and it's so easy to set them up for the things that you set them up for. And they just simply don't give a fuck. They're like, you think I'm slurring my words? You think I'm punching? Who do you train with? They're very good in moments, if you go watch a highlight of trash talk of the Diaz brothers, it's going to appear that they're good trash talkers. But if you go sit down and watch them in a press conference, it's painful. They don't want to be there. They are not entertaining the trash talk. But when you pull excerpts from it and you just get them fuck you, it's kind of funny to watch highlights of it. But in verbal altercations, the Diaz brothers are just 2 steps behind in social settings. So it's it's painful. But you love it because you get a Diaz brother. But yeah, I think that their trash talk game is rather weak, and they get built into these trash talking superstars, but they really just don't care. So the elements of that makes it fun when you get Diaz versus McGregor. But I got to go the Diaz brothers in there at number 2 together. And I'll blow it now. My number 1 is Tito. Tito is by far just anybody watching, go pleasure yourself to a compilation of Tito and press conferences, please. Like, you're gonna hear this guy say stuff where you're like, what? Like, you thought that was a good idea before this happened, and you just had to share it with the world. Like, literally mind-bogglingly terrible at trash talking is Tito Ortiz, and in my opinion, you got to give him the crown or the Sir hat.
You and I have a different crown because I hadn't named my number one yet.
Yeah.
My number one was on your list. Can you guess which one it was? Luke Rockhold. Luke Rockhold is number one.
Wow. Okay. I
listen, the trash talk against Bisping might be the worst collection of trash talk in the history of MMA.
Right.
But the funniest one, what you said was hilarious because I agree that was one of the funnier ones where he's like, I'm gonna go in there, believe, achieve, whatever. But the same one is like, I'm gonna go in there like a samurai, and Bisping's like, what the hell is this?
Yeah. Like, oh, now you're a samurai. Come on, Luke.
But one of the worst ones, if you just watch him in an interview, it's mind-boggling. But he was doing an interview with Bisping. I think it was on Fox, UFC on Fox. And he said to Bisping, yeah, you were talking about destiny, right? And Bisping was like, yeah, destiny. And he was like, it's your destiny to be my... And he mouthed the B word on a platform that allowed for cursing. So Bisping, after he did that, Bisping just looked at him like this. Like, just was staring at him like, what? Why did you do that? Like, why did you censor yourself? And then it was so quiet and awkward because the mic was on him. There wasn't stuff going on. It wasn't like it was drowned out. He was just like me and you right now talking. It's silent. And I just go, it's your destiny to be my little... It's like, like it was so bad.
Yeah, you ruined it. You ruined it.
So bad. Yeah, he was
like everybody's on those platforms, like having these verbal altercations, talking back and forth, playing the game, and then Rockhold just up here on his high horse, he's so obviously smugly sat up on his high horse that he just literally, you could tell, thinks he's so much superior to these human beings around him, these peasants around him, that it's like, yeah, it's crazy that he has his style of trash talk with his level of arrogance to where it's like, yeah, it's painful.
There's a video out there called Luke Rockhold being Luke Rockhold for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it captures every awkward moment in this poor guy's career on a camera. Yeah. And one of the worst ones, they pan the camera to him. I think he's sitting next to Nate Diaz, or he's sitting next to somebody that everybody was cheering for, and he's just kind of waving to the camera, but he doesn't know what to do with his hands. He doesn't know when to start. He's like this, and then he's just kind of looking at the camera. He doesn't know when to not look at it.
Yeah.
It looks terrible. Luke is the type of guy that you could tell, success that he has with women, we know what's going on there.
Yeah.
He's probably not super smooth with the words, not impressed with the words, but good-looking guy, good shape. Probably has, I imagine there's a semblance of a personality down there somewhere, but I don't know. It's just the trash talk not working for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not for it. Honorable mentions. I think you got to give the King of Cringe. You put him in your list. You got to put him up there because that stuff is painful to watch. And yeah, there's Cody Garbrandt. It can get painful at times when he is so gung-ho about his trash talk that you could tell it's taking everything in Cody Garbrandt to literally not let this elevate into a middle school fist fight right this second. Garbrandt is so ready to literally jump across the table and fight you for what you just said to him. He's the middle school bully that happened to be really nice at fighting. Cody Garbrandt is just the ultimate that guy when it comes to trash talk, self-made, tattooed on his neck, it's just Cody Garbrandt deserves an honorable mention because he didn't make either of our lists. But yeah, I got to put him up there. Some of his stuff, and I like Cody. I think Cody's a cool guy. I like him as a fighter and whatnot, but
For sure.
I'll be up there in the terrible trash.
Yeah, again, we're not insulting these guys for saying that they're not great on the microphone. It's not easy to be good on the mic. Even the guys in the WWE who get paid specifically to practice that art, a lot of them don't end up being good at it. At least these guys, listen, they might be bad on the mic. At least they can fight. At the end of the day, they can always.
GSP made my list for crying out loud. Like,
come on, we're
bad about the guy. He just sucks at talking trash.
This is pointing out a flaw. That's like saying this guy's not great at wrestling. Yeah. Talking is a part of fighting just as much as the techniques are, because it's prize fighting. It's not just a backyard fight of techniques. Right. It is not JJF with jiu-jitsu. You're selling stuff. That's why they have press. That's all. That's why they have post-fight interviews. Now let's go to our favorite game. This was fun. We should do more stuff like this. More top five.
Yeah.
Let's go to our favorite game, Fight Corner Roll. I was in charge this week of coming up with the list. So our first trio is Roy Nelson, Ken Shamrock, and Royce Gracie.
Wow. So you put Big Country in there, which totally is a curveball of the group. I'm going to fight Royce Gracie. I want to fight him. I think that now in an MMA fight, no gi, none of that. Like, I think I could stay standing and beat the guy who made the UFC. Ken Shamrock is another guy who, legend of the sport, obviously, who would be a cool one to fight or share the octagon with. I'm not trying to fight Big Country because he's just a punching bag and then drop bombs on you. And it's like, all right, do one of those bombs land. I'm not going to be there to find that out. So I'll corner Big Country because I think that'll be a fun week. And I think that man probably don't give two shits about getting in a cage fight. So he just goes in there and bangs. I like Big Country. Think he'd be a cool guy to hang out with. And Ken Shamrock just seems like the most cringy dude. He deserves a spot, an honorable mention at least in the top 5 trash talking, because he was just kind of like delusional with things as well. So yeah, I'm gonna roll with Shamrock. Great grappler, legend of the sport, much respect, but I'm not trying to chill with him all week. So I'm gonna corner Big Country, and yeah.
Okay, so here's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Fighting Shamrock. Don't ask me why.
All right.
I'm rolling with Roy Nelson. Every now and then I want
that man can roll. He is round. He can literally.
Yeah. Every now and then I need a confidence boost, and I think I can get that by rolling with Roy. I'm cornering Royce Gracie. Does it need to be said why? I get to meet the Gracie family.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be the most legendary. And if I get to go back in time and do it when they were in their prime, that means I'm hanging out with the prime Gracie family, just eating acai with these guys. I'm just sitting there like, all right, our next trio, Colby Covington, Jorge Masvidal, and Robbie Lawler.
Wow. I'm fighting Colby because, yeah, that's just going to be fun. That press conference, that's going to be fun. I'm coming in I don't even like politics, but I'm wearing a Feel the Burn hat. I'm coming in there. The biggest left-wing ideologist. Like, I'm just going to bring in, like, famous left-wing figures with me. Like, yeah, I'm playing that up. I'm playing it up. We're going to fight around the election. Like, yeah, it's going to be good. Me versus Colby. I think we're probably going to be in the same corner on this one. I think Masvidal is the obvious one to corner. Who doesn't want to chill with Masvidal in the gang for a week? And Masvidal's that type of guy. You don't gotta get in his face and like, all right, it's your time to prove it to the world. Like, you don't gotta get that guy ready for a fight. He's walking out there and doing what he loves. So like the cornering, isn't going to be too high stakes. The guy's going in there to do what he does. But fight week's going to be fun. You know, like it's a guy, he's a veteran. He's been there so many times that he's just there enjoying fight week. You know, his vlogs, you bought his you bought on JorgeMasvidal.com his series, right? The full 10 episode series.
Yeah, it was incredible.
He peels back the curtain, you see him cutting weight and stuff, and it's like, this guy's just enjoying it. He's having fun. You know, he's not making everything about the fight game such a big deal. You know, like he knows the parts of the game that suck, so he has fun with his friends while he's doing those parts that suck. You know, like I think he's, you know, kind of mastered the energy of fight week. So I gotta, it's gonna be fight Colby, roll with Masvidal, and then corner Masvidal, sorry, and then I'm rolling with Robbie Lawler, I guess, which will be interesting. Robbie's he's been in the game forever. I'm sure he's got some grappling tricks and whatnot, but not known for it. That's my 3 on that.
All right, I'm fighting Robbie Lawler
Okay.
because I'm suicidal.
Yeah.
And I'm going to corner Jorge, obviously, because that's like hanging out with my Miami friends. It's nothing.
It's a party. It's a week.
I would be able to drink some recuerdo. I'd be able to smoke.
I was going to say the mezcal is going to be in abundance.
Yeah, I have some cigars. He won't have any because I hear he doesn't smoke cigars, but I will. And I'm gonna roll with Colby. And the reason why I want to roll with Colby is actually because I don't want to interact with the persona of Colby Covington. If I corner or fight him, I have to interact with his persona. I want to actually know what he is behind the persona.
I like that.
And rolling with him is an opportunity to see kind of how he is and maybe gain a little bit of respect for him, because I'm sure there's things about him that are noble and honorable that I would like to know so that it can help inform my opinion of him as a person.
Yeah. And he's a dog on the mat. Like,
exactly.
You're going to get smashed.
Yes.
Some things in that mat time right there, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like it's super valuable mat time for wrestling, and just I think it would even remind me, like my professor, Professor Jason Degata here at Gracie Barra and Trinity, because of his elite wrestling, wrestled in Division I, his jiu-jitsu when he rolls and he meshes the two, it's a beautiful display. And when I watch wrestlers grapple, like just grapple, not just wrestle, I notice that. And so I feel like I've already gotten exposed to that combination of skills. Yeah. And even though you are getting smashed, you really do feel like you're learning two things at once. It's phenomenal. I love it. You get to pick up on different things that you don't learn by just a guard player, okay? Just a guy that plays. So I feel like you can learn so much from a guy that is incorporating the wrestling at an elite level first. And our final trio, Uncle Joey Diaz, Joe Rogan, or Bryan Callen.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. That's tough.
I'll go first.
Okay.
This is a difficult one. Very difficult.
Really tough.
So,
because you want to hang out with all of them.
I know. Yeah, because that's the thing. If you corner one, you're seeing all of them.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
But if you fight one, all of them are in the opposite corner.
Yeah.
And this is tough because I'm going to have to say that I would fight Bryan Callen, because Bryan Callen, guy, I don't know if this is his persona or not, but he could be a little unlikable, come across a little bit like a know-it-all.
Yeah.
And I feel like, it'd probably be it'd probably be an interesting. I'd get to hear Brendan Schwab comment on what he thinks is going to happen when his friend fights me. So that'd be interesting. Obviously, I'm rolling with Joe because I really, really want to know what level he's at. If Jean-Jacques gave him the vote of confidence, I mean, Jean-Jacques Machado giving you confidence, that's worth a hell of a lot in my book. So I'd like to roll with him and see what that's like. And imagine learning from him on the mat too, and spending that time with him would be great. The type of person he is, and I'd probably roll with him at his studios. I might get on the podcast. We might get on the.
Hey.
And is there any question why I would want to corner Joey Diaz? I mean, it's Joey Diaz.
Oh my God,
it's Joey Diaz. That's gotta be.
Yeah, you got to. And I'm the same. Honestly, maybe not. Maybe corner Joey definitely has its perks, but cornering Joe would be crazy, getting to spend a whole week with Joe. You know, like getting to pick Joe's brain for a whole week and like building a relationship with him would be crazy. And yeah, just to see how he would prepare for a fight and whatnot. Yeah, I would really like to see that. As far as the fight goes, it's hard because how could you want to hit him? But I feel like fighting Joey Diaz would just be the best because getting to go against him in a press conference, like, that's going to be hilarious. Like, Joey Diaz talking shit, like, all right, he's probably going to fry me in a skillet at the press conference, but that's going to be hilarious and only make me more marketable based off of that interaction. Basically a roast battle up there. So yeah, I'm fighting Uncle Joey with love in my heart. And then I'm simply just going to circle until he gets tired and then, you know, roll to a heel hook. Take Uncle Joey out pain-free and, yeah, enjoy that week of lead up. And you know he's partying with you after you fight, too. So
yes.
Feelings with Uncle Joey. Corner and Joe, just because, yeah, that week with Joe would be fascinating. I'm sure he'd be doing podcasts and whatnot still. And then, yeah, I guess that leaves me to roll with Bryan Callen. Yeah, I hate to bring it up, but he's going through all those sexual allegations. I don't know if you saw that.
No.
Yeah, he's got all that coming down on him right now.
What?
Yeah, he's from.
Is that why he wasn't on the show?
Yeah.
Wow.
From what I hear, it doesn't seem as legitimate as the like Chris D'Elia stuff and whatnot, and like the reaction of the people that were close to him. Like, it doesn't appear that he did it from the outside. Obviously, it's hard when you have multiple women, you know, making a movement about somebody. But, you know, like, it's tough because now we live in this cancel culture where people can literally just tweet something and then get some more people to hop on the bandwagon. And now we've got, like, the defamation of somebody's character. But it's, like, it's tough because just some of the allegations against him just seemed far-fetched. Like, what? Like, one was, like, I don't even want to, you know, get into that too much. But it a lot of the stuff didn't seem too legit. So I hope Bryan is clear on that. You know, I hope everybody's clear on that. Obviously, I hope nobody's doing that stuff. But, yeah, I don't know. I hope it's not true. But with that being said, I guess I'm rolling with Bryan and smashing him. Yeah, sorry to take it to that place and kill the vibe.
Yeah, what'd you do to the show?
Yeah, that was.
Hey, it's okay though but that's the thing though. We're not just an MMA podcast. Like,
yeah,
I do want to say quickly on the Bryan Callen thing. It's like you're wrestling with two combating sentiments.
Yeah,
you want to hate cancel culture. You want to hate the mob, but you also understand that ordinarily sexual abuse is something that comes out later, is something that at first doesn't appear for many to be abusive. Like, full disclosure, I've experienced that. I've been a victim of that. And it was not something that I realized in the moment. It was something that later on I realized by looking back on it. And that wasn't a case of just trying to find something. Who the hell wants that? And so that was one of those things where you learn what a grooming technique is. You learn what that behavior is, and you realize, oh, that's what was happening. I was just too young and naive to see it. So you're combating two things where you like a guy and you want a guy not to be the villain that this would make him. Yeah. And you want to protect somebody from a mob taking out an innocent guy because we want justice. We don't want innocent people going down. But at the same time, on the other hand, you realize, hey, all people seem innocent until you find out that one thing about them. And so I think that Bryan Callen is caught between that tension. And as more information comes out, obviously we'll have more clarity. But I think that the proper posture toward this is one of, hey, I really don't know right now, but to discount either reality, to discount that he could have done it, or to discount that, you know, he definitely didn't do it, that, you know, those to discount rather that the story of the people saying he did it, I think is a little far-fetched. And also to say that he absolutely did it just because he's a white male comedian, like, doesn't mean that he did it. And so, like, people don't want to live in tension between two ideals. They always want to camp out safely in one extreme. And so you see people running, attack the mob, attack the culture and the cancel culture coming after him, or attack the guy because, hey, you know guys like that. So you're projecting what you know about these other guys onto this guy. I think the proper place to be is in the tense place of really not knowing, that limbo. That's where I feel like the greatest thinkers operate, in the tension, not camping out. So I don't think he did anything wrong by bringing that up, dude. I think that makes, if anything, it's good that we brought it up because, I mean, I didn't know that when I wrote that. I didn't know that when I wrote
and I will go into it now. The reason I kind of don't think it's real is one of the main stories that started the movement of, like, the Me Too movement on Callen is somebody said, like, he bull rushed him into a bathroom stall and stuff like that. And it's just, like, at a comedy club or a club or something like that. And it's like, all right, is he really, like, getting that outwardly aggressive and not caring about where he's at and when he's doing this and, like, bull rushing women into public bathrooms? Like, it just seemed a little too much. You know, it wasn't like, you know, a lot of these stories that come out on these guys, it's like in private settings and, like, hotels after the show, and, like, you know, like, the stories kind of make sense and all of them are consistent, whereas, like, the stories that came out on Bryan were just kind of all over the place and seemed really out of left field and out of character, especially right after, like, literally weeks after the D'Elia scandal just happened, and Callen and Brendan Schaub on their show gave, like, one of the most, like, heartfelt reactions to that, where they both got, like, real emotional and stuff about their friend being involved with something like that. So it just didn't seem right that Bryan was that guy. And Bryan's real open about talking about sexual things and, like, even, like, sexually, like, not deviant, but, like, things that are outside of the norm. You know, he's expressed that he's into things outside of the norm, so to speak, like, you know, like threesomes on the road and whatnot with the guy who opens for him and stuff like that. But, like, he seems very, like, open and, like, accepting of things in the sexual space. You know, like, if somebody doesn't like things or has kinks, he's not judgmental at all, and he's, like, accepting. Like, he seems very, you know, in that space. He doesn't seem like the guy to be aggressive in that space. But that's, you know, making a lot of assumptions and whatnot.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying is based on what I've seen from this person, that would be a surprise way to do it. Now, if you told me that he was sending, you know, inappropriate messages, that he was, but then again, all sexual assault is violent in the sense of an intrusion on somebody's space and autonomy. So really, unless you know somebody who's just a total prick, it's always going to be a surprise, right? But I agree with what you're saying. Like, when that whole War Machine thing happened, that wasn't surprising. He nicknamed him.
Or even, like, the D'Elia thing. I hate to say it, but, like, when it came out about D'Elia, I was like, D'Elia might have did that. You know?
Right?
Himself and stuff. And, like, you know, it was just, I don't know. It's a weird topic that's hard to really, like, draw a line in the sand on an individual basis. Like, it's easy to draw a line in the sand on what's right and wrong. But when you're, you know, looking at somebody from the outside and trying to say who is telling the truth, it's really hard not knowing. So I don't want to marry myself to either of these positions of saying, like, 100% he didn't do it and those people are liars. But, you know, like, it's just a tough topic, but, you know, something that is the reality of the times we're living in with cancel culture and whatnot and how things work. You know, like, it's great that people have a voice, you know, victims, you know, can bring things to the light, but at the same time, you see how, you know, people who for some reason don't like somebody, it would be very easy for them to put that out there on somebody, you know, and it would be easy for other people to jump on that ship, you know, because now if there's 3 or 4 people coming at you, it's probably easier to just settle with all of them in court and pay them off and tell them to go away, you know? So it's like those people all probably just got paid, you know? So it's like, it's tough to say when, you know, that's the reality of the situation and the times we're living in, really.
I'll tell you what, man, I'm not surprised by the immensity of human depravity. I'm not surprised by the keen ability for human beings to be depraved and to do evil things and to do messed up things. And I think a lot of the reasons why I believe in God would be because I believe in a notion of justice. And there are things that occur in this world that, apart from a view of a moral objective, you would have to say they got away with that.
Yeah.
These guys got away with that. And so philosophically, I look at that and say, man, people have a weirdly infinite capacity to do evil.
Yeah.
And it plays itself out in so many ways. Like, and so when I hear about these things, it's disheartening. But here's the thing. Not even the popular people, dude. When I hear about people I know, or people that I've, people from high school, or teachers or stuff like that, or people in the community, and I'm like, man, like, people don't know, man, where we live in Florida is a huge hotbed for human trafficking.
Yeah.
Just the notion that this stuff still goes on. And I think there's a lot of things which one day I think we'll talk more about. I think people will realize that we're more than just MMA podcast, because I think we ought to one day talk about the way our culture and the way that, because I think there's something to be said about the way our culture has evolved and has sexualized so much stuff that has actually paved the way for sexual assault.
Yeah, but at the same time, you have to, exactly, paved the way for it in a way, because at the end of the day, we're sexual beings, and a lot of people are like born into an environment where a lot of that is already out in the open, and like, they just get exposed to those things at such a young age. And, the phrase hurt people is, just kind of one of those, truths, in a lot of ways. They're cycle breakers, which are very powerful people, but, in a lot of ways, hurt people. And a lot of people have been hurt, and, and they grow up in an environment that, or without the awareness that lends them to breaking a cycle, and it just gets passed on generation to generation. And this is something that happens in the animal kingdom. Like, there's literally like molestation in like the different species of primates and like dolphins and shit. It's like, this is just nature. Like, sexual beings, like, they want that even if they can't have that, so they're gonna get that sometimes, unfortunately. And it's like, it just leads to, unfortunately, it's part of our like evolution as a species, I guess, is, learning how to deal with these things, especially in modern times where we have, technology and whatnot, which makes it easy for these evil people who are doing things like sex trafficking and stuff. Like, technology and vehicles, like, it's, you can, throw somebody in the back of a van and drive off. A gorilla has to go physically stop another gorilla to do something to them. But this day and age, it's just different, and it's gross for sure. But it's
I think it's an interesting combo we got to have in the future. And maybe like, let's prepare the audience for
sure. Not just go jump into rape.
It's definitely interesting. What I will say is comparisons to the animal kingdom are potent in some areas, but when it deals with things of the moral nature, I tend to believe that our human morality is transcendent. It's not something that we evolved to understand, because I think there's a lot of things in our moral compass that we would never have evolved to understand. We would never have evolved to respect the dead. We would never have evolved to, I don't know, a variety of ethical things or legal or,
arranged marriage. Like, your 13-year-old daughter already had a husband lined up if she wasn't married by 13 already. So it's hard to say, because nowadays, an 18-year-old with a 13-year-old's illegal, whereas in another country right now in modern day, that there might be a 13-year-old getting married to a 37-year-old today, and it's totally okay there. So it's like,
that would be cultural ethics. Like, what does a culture deem ethical? Like, some cultures spank their kids. Some cultures have more friend relationships with their kids. Some culture parents are more authoritarian. But in terms of moral, the things that we would say are objective, no human being should do this, or all human beings should do this. Like we agree all human beings should be honest. We agree no human beings should murder other people. Like those type of morals, I feel like only have their objective nature. Unlike cultural ethics, which can vary, they only have that objective nature because they're transcendent, because they come from something super objective. That's my opinion. But I think that's why we can look at rape and murder and automatically we don't say, well, where are they from? You know, we don't say, we say, you know, we say, hey, there's something especially heinous that goes beyond just ethical disagreement. I can have an ethical disagreement with someone. If somebody, I don't know, if somebody is a fan of like Florida State, that's against my ethics. You know what I'm saying? As a Hurricane, I can disagree ethically, but I don't think they're morally inferior for that ethical disagreement. Right. But there are things I think that are moral, and I don't necessarily I wouldn't say I'm superior to them because I don't engage in their particular sin of choice. I'm saying that those things would be deemed on a moral scale. Those things would say that's morally abhorrent. An excellent way to end our podcast, I think.
Yeah, what a great take some great vibes into the day with this.
Hey, I think there's nothing. I love philosophy, so there's nothing more vibey to me than that. But I agree. Probably not what they were expected after we talked about rolling with Bryan Callen and cornering Joey Diaz. But we go off into the day, and we hope you enjoyed it. Any last words?
Yeah, I mean, just to, you know, get it back in the right direction. We got some great fights this weekend, and we got a fight card every single weekend until Christmas week. So literally the rest of the year, we have fights on Saturday night, which is just such a beautiful thing. And this fight card is going to be amazing. I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, I mean, I'll be like 17 days out from COVID. So hopefully I can get my test before then. We can maybe, you know, get together and watch that card together this weekend and, you know, have some real good feedback to give on that. Yeah, just excited for the fights to come to end this on the positive note. We got a lot to look forward to right now in the fight game. Let's throw out the U.
It's all about the you.
Yeah. All right, brother. Well, I say we did it.